Just give me a second. Okay, well, there it is. 3, 2, 1, boom.
Okay, welcome back to From Darkness to Light. My name is Adam Miller. Today we have a very special guest, Alma Neidel. We're going to talk, we'll see what we're going to talk about, a little bit about healing, a little bit about overcoming addiction, the recovery process. And as always, we'll just kind of have a discussion and see where it goes and what we can learn. So without further ado, welcome, Alma. How are you today?
Hi, Adam. Hi, Todd. I'm well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Very busy, lots going on, major shifts going on in my life, in the world, as we all know. Just kind of riding the new waves and getting everything together and taking big steps and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm well. So what I guess we could start, like, is anything you want to just start with? You were born in Israel, correct? And then you moved to your States.
Born
like
and
20
raised.
years ago? Nice.
And I lived in the States for the past 20 years, pretty much in all the major big cities.
Okay. What was growing up in Israel like?
It was intense.
Yeah.
It was intense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine. What was there anything like that you liked about it, or I mean, we don't have to talk about it if you don't want, but
Absolutely, yeah. There's current situation right now kind of got me stressed out. So
okay.
but growing up there, no, it's okay. But growing up there, there was a sense of security in a really interesting way. Like, people would tell me when I go from Los Angeles to visit Israel, they would tell me to be safe. And I never understood what they were talking about, because I always felt safe there, even safer than I do in Los Angeles, energetically speaking.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard
I always
that.
felt safer there. Yeah. And there's a sense of familiarity that I never encountered in the States, no matter where I lived. And I lived in the Midwest. And of course, each city is different, but there is a sense of familiarity in Israel that I haven't encountered any other place in the world.
That's fascinating. Would you say because it's like everyone's just kind of bonded together and sort of looking out for each other in like a communal sort of way? That's what I've heard. I mean, I'm Jewish, but I'm American Jewish, so it's quite a bit different than like Israeli Jewish. I know, but I've heard that many times. Like, when something happens, everybody just kind of comes together and they clean up the situation or overcome it really quickly and just move on, and they're all there for each other in a way that, I mean, everything is so scattered and disconnected in America in every way, shape, and form. I feel like that,
and it's something that's really beautiful to watch, to be a part of. The sense of community, that people come together in times of crisis, and there's always a crisis.
Right. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's actually, even though it's more difficult in some ways, you would think, to live there, you also felt safer.
100%. It's peaceful on a personal level. Like, living in the States is easier on material level. In the States, it's just easier. But in terms of community and a sense of community, Israel is, you'll feel a much stronger bond as a community. I was born in a kibbutz, which is a social community. And I was born in the 80s, and it was a really naive time, and we didn't lock the doors, and I was raised in a children's house until I was 3.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was, so that's where I picked up separation anxiety, fear of abandonment. And my father was American.
We all kind of develop those things kind of regardless from everywhere. But so you were there's more immediate danger, like, right? Because there like bombings, etc. Is this like something that you lived through, like, or like the fear of this?
Yes, I lived in Tel Aviv when I was 19, and it was the times that buses would explode on the road when you were walking on the sidewalk. It was really intense. It was really scary. So when I lived in San Francisco from 2003 to 2006, they used to have an alarm, like a test of something, not sure, but I worked in Union Square in a jewelry store, and there was an alarm that would go on, and everybody that would just come from Israel would get super panicked, because that's the time to go to a bomb shelter.
Yeah, right. It meant something different to you than, right.
Exactly. Yeah. So PTSD.
Yeah. No, I trauma is like, do you work with trauma, and you're a massage therapist, right? Do you like you work with trauma also? Yes or no?
Not in particularly. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do. And that's such a safety is so important in healing trauma. Is just like anytime there is any like group of community where people come together and can feel like reliant upon each other, that creates a very large sense of community. And that's where, like, you know, like a lot of healing comes from, is just like resolving the patterns that we're responding to in the past. And we all have different versions of that, and that, like, hearing an alarm and not thinking you could be, you know, getting blown to pieces at any moment is like way different than, you know, some of the things. I mean, there's a lot of trauma in America too, in a lot of really horrible ways also. But just that sense of like, it's interesting how in a harsher environment, you also had more of like the safety than in America. Yeah. Like,
and tools as an individual. I mean,
yeah.
I think I learned at a young age how to breathe properly, to calm myself down, and how to dissociate, which is not a healthy way of coping with trauma, but it worked for as long as it did.
They taught you how to dissociate? Or like they actually taught you that?
No. That was my own.
Your own response. Yeah, that's a common trauma response. Yeah, I bet, like, anytime childhood trauma or the emotions are too much, we go kind of in our head, because like if the emotions are too intense, it becomes very harmful, like physiologically too. It's just, yeah.
Right. So the experience of your soul leaving your body,
right,
so that you can survive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which then when you grow up can really negatively impact your life, because you're walking around like disconnected. But it's also like that was a defense mechanism that worked before. I mean, that's kind of like one of the big things that I do is like, and have gone through in my own life, not to the extent that you have, but being highly sensitive.
I don't think it's comparable, you know. I think everybody's,
No, I agree. And that's kind of one of the messages I have is like, it's like everybody's bar is different, and it's like everybody's sensitivity is different, everybody's ancestry is different. I mean, even being Jewish, like I have been in like complete terror since I was a child for no reason sometimes, and way more than the extent of whatever was going on in my environment because of my ancestry. It's like
100%. It's a DNA baggage that we carry.
Yeah. I mean, like I wasn't in the Holocaust, but like my mom's, like on my mom's lineage, we have that. And it's been a big part of my healing process, like learning to connect to those other parts of not just me, but my DNA and my ancestors, and healing that as well. It's like we all, like when we heal ourselves, we heal so many other things that we're not even aware of. And
100%, there's a ripple effect.
Yeah. And it's like you were saying, it's not comparable, because we're all responding to so many different things. And that's just like, you can never really tell. You don't know what someone else is going through, because you can't even tell what they're going through just when they tell you their human story, because there's so many other aspects to it, which is just good for fostering compassion and just being like, you know, like I can't really judge, I can't compare. All I can do is look at you know, what I'm going through and work on that.
Right. And we also channel it through our own personal filters, which is
Yeah.
subjective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the mind makes it real. The mind, you know, whether the threat's real or imagined, the body responds in the same way, just like with the alarm on the in San Francisco, like there was nothing really going on there, but you were still responding to the past. Yeah.
Exactly. You bring a perception according to whatever baggage you're carrying from this life, past life, ancestor.
Yeah. All of it. Yeah. It's so, because you can go through your childhood, which is important. This is what, like, part of my healing journey. I went through my childhood and there was a lot there to heal. And then there were all these other things. I was like, this isn't from my childhood. This is from somewhere else. Like, I can't, that's when I got into past lives and ancestral healing. I was like, just like the basic talk therapy version of like, this is why you are the way you are, like didn't answer the majority of the questions or issues I had.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I think I had an opposite process, because I had a lot of denial, and in my mind I had the most perfect childhood, and then through healing work, shadow work, step work, I came to realize, probably the fact that my father left when I was 2 months did affect me, and the fact that I lived in a children's house probably did affect me, and you know, feeling unwanted and finding my father for the first time when I was 17. And him having a completely different story than my mom, who both did the best they can with their own collection of demons and their own past, and doing the very best they can. But seems like parents, no matter what they do, however well they're trying to do it, somehow it's never going to be perfect.
No, and I found all that stuff too. And I found like I've had trauma in my birth, and you know, trauma from after my birth and in the womb, and like, and all of that was very like, I mean, 0 to 7 is an enormously impressionable time for anybody, and the majority, I think, of anyone's trauma comes from there. But it, like, I also found, because it's just part of my path to heal all this stuff, like ancestrally, like soul level. So I found all these other things too, and I also learned how like the soul trauma and the past life trauma connected to the human trauma and why I chose it. But I think to your point, like, no, like anything a parent does, it's going to cause, like, the point of our lives is to have some problems. So it's like, there's no, like, whatever they do, you're going to go in this direction. And then you want to kind of come back to center. Like people who have it like too safe or too easy, then have all kinds of trauma later because life is so hard they can't handle. You know, it's like any which way you go.
Right. And in Judaism, there's that, I'm not religious, but in Judaism, there's that concept of tikkun, which is correction, which is what people talk about near-death experiences. When you hear people who come back from those experiences, they would often channel that this is the path that their soul has chosen.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a common, I believe that I chose all of that.
Right. Well, and that's what leads to healing, because that's responsibility on some level. And that's kind of the tricky thing sometimes, is like knowing that as a kid, it wasn't your fault, right? Because when you're a kid, you're totally innocent, but then connecting to the part of you that did choose it, so that you can then kind of own it and dissolve it and heal. Because if everything is everyone else's fault, you have no power, right?
Exactly. You perpetuate victim consciousness,
right?
Addictions, and
yeah. In fact, did you read Man's Search for Meaning? Did you?
I haven't, and I know it's on my list. I'm reading so many books in the past 6 months because I feel like I've woken up, so I'm starving.
That book is so good. I mean, that is like, you want to talk about like an antidote to like any kind of victim complex. Like when I read that, all the parts of me that were like, oh, it's so hard for me, and I'm a victim, and nobody understands me, were like, they just shut up. Because like this guy, I mean, he was a therapist or psychotherapist, and he lost his parents in the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz and Dachau. what got him through that for 3 years, like not knowing if he was going to live every day of his life, was waiting to see his wife again and hoping that he would. And when he gets out, because he made it out, he finds out she died like 3 weeks in, and he still carried the message of like, I'm not a victim. Like, regardless of what happens, like there is a higher force at work in the world, and there's a reason for all of it. And sometimes the only power we have left is how to choose our responses and reactions to any given set of circumstances. And it's just like, you can't, anyone could have gone to victimhood with that guy's story. And he was so, and one of the things that blew me away was because when you look at like a lot of Holocaust survivors, I can see like the trauma still, and I totally get it. Like, how would you not be traumatized? But when I watch videos of that guy when he was older, Viktor Frankl, like he's not broken. He's present. Like his soul is there, like in his eyes, like with this strength, and he has a joy to him. And it was just like, it's all you in the end. Like it's your choice, like what you want to make of it. And like, yeah, I would recommend that book to anybody, really. But
Promise I read it.
yeah, it's good. So you came here, and then you're in the program, right? You're sober. Okay.
Yes.
So what was your experience with drugs like? What kind of got you? How did you get into that, or why? Or just curious if you want to talk about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So besides dissociating, my go-to coping skill growing up was eating disorders.
Okay.
And when I lived in San Francisco, I had a close friend who was smoking a lot of cannabis. And I was always against that. And I never drank because it was empty calories and doesn't go with eating disorders. And eating disorders also is very connected to needing to be in control, to hold on to the illusion of control and manage, and pretty much being in control. So for me, the idea of losing control was terrifying. However, I was very influenced by this human, and I tried it, and I found myself going to visit him pretty much every day. And I realized that I like him less and less, but I really liked the drugs. So eventually I started buying for myself, and it was a really fast downward spiral for me. Really fast downward spiral. I could not, I lived to use and used to live. It became,
sorry, I didn't hear that. What did you say?
I lived to use and used to live.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
That became that's what I decided, that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I was all dedicated to it, and it was all consuming. It was a slow deterioration process because it's not hard drugs. It is for me. I mean, I cannot use, it will take over my life, and really
we're all
fast.
different. Yeah. We're all different. Yeah.
But I lost my apartment. I lost my self-esteem. I was homeless at some point, not living on the street. I did sleep in a bus station once, but I didn't have a place of my own for a really long time, which couch surfing and
And so what, that was just from smoking, pot. It was just, that was the thing. So
let's just say it was my main, it was my drug of choice. I've experienced in other drugs, but that was my downfall.
And would you say like one of the things you got out of that was just kind of shutting off like, I know for me, it shut, I was a heroin addict, and I blew through like pot and alcohol and cocaine and all of it because it was the only thing that like calmed my nervous system down. Like it was the only, like even that, like people, for me, my dad is not Jewish, and my dad had alcoholism, and people would say, counselors would say, oh, you have a drug problem because you have alcoholism on your father's side. And I was always like, no, I'm a drug addict because of all of the trauma on my mother's side, because it was the only thing that shut off all those like trauma responses. Like, does that resonate with you? Like, as far as why you did it, or?
You're telling my story because my father wasn't Jewish either. And my
Okay.
mom would tell me that he would drink a highball of vodka every single night. And
Yeah.
she'd tell me, I asked her, was he an alcoholic? And she goes, no, he just drank this one glass of vodka every single night. And I was thinking to myself, that's what you saw.
Yeah.
But yeah, he lost a lot of money gambling. He had
Okay.
addiction was very prominent in his side. My mom she never got into drugs, but she would testify for herself that she's an addict. When she smokes cigarettes still at her advanced age. And yeah, I 100% relate to the idea. Well, there's this baggage of guilt. I mean, I think it's a human experience, because you can say it's a Jewish experience, you can say it's a Catholic experience, but I think it's something that we all carry as humans.
It is. It's just trauma from different places, but yeah.
So I 100% relate with you. We may have the same father.
Yeah, but
he wasn't Jewish either.
I just always felt like, because he drank a lot. I mean, we never really saw it. He wasn't like an abusive alcoholic. He's a really sweet man, but he just would kind of travel and then drink. But I never had the drinking thing. I just always was trying to calm my body down. Like, I was just I never felt comfortable. And, the more I've learned about my responses, the more I feel like the addiction came from the trauma. It just came from like, just trying to calm down and feel present and feel in the moment, and like the wounding, which came from both sides of the family, sure. But yeah, I don't know. It just is, it's like that God-sized hole that we try to fill. And then when you heal, like, it starts to shift. That's how it's been for me. So what happened that got you sober? Like, what was your kind of bottom? I mean, you already kind of described your bottom, like sleeping at the bus station, but when did you have?
I've had many bottoms. You were talking about alcohol. So for me, I would get drunk. I never liked alcohol, but when it was the only substance around. Yeah. The thing is, what I understand that being an addict means that once I put one in, I cannot stop.
Right.
And it includes alcohol, 100%. So I got drunk when I lived in Vegas. I got drunk twice, and I got arrested twice in the same week. And you were talking about the God hole shape, the God shaped hole.
Yeah. Size hole. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I remember I was in Las Vegas detention center. I was in isolation because they thought I was suicidal, and then they moved me to a room with 30 other inmates, and we were all sleeping on cots. And I remember seeing a bookshelf with a bunch of books on it, and I was drawn to it. It was still not coherent. I was there for about 3 days, and I saw Chumash, which is a part of the Bible, the first 5 books of the Torah, and it had no cover. But I took it, and I remember just opening it and reading it. And mind you, I'm not religious, but I realized that at this point I have nowhere to look but up. So that's what I did. And I remember I read it cover to cover, and then 3 days later, a correction officer came and put their hands on my shoulder and told me that I was bailed out. Wow. Yeah, I had $5 to my name, and I did not have the $3,000 to bail me out. But yeah, it was a miracle.
And then what happened after you got out?
Oh my God, it took a really long time. That was in 2009. And my first visit, my first attempt in getting clean was in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just, and then you just kind of went back and forth, like with, like you got clean for a little bit. And then,
It was really hard for me to surrender. Really hard for me to surrender. really hard for me to accept the fact that I'm an addict and that I need help for the rest of my life, and I need to surrender on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I really liked leaving my body. I really liked not feeling,
Right.
I really like disconnecting.
Right.
I hear people in the program say that they're emotionally dyslexic or emotionally disabled, and I really relate to that because it's a process.
It's a process. Like
addicts feel on full volume, you know. And
well, I feel like the thing with addicts is, like, I'm very fascinated with addicts, light workers, empaths, because artists, I feel like it's all kind of the same thing underneath. It's like there's this extra sensitivity, which then is either a gift or a curse, right? So when you're really sensitive and you go through something traumatic, it's like trauma is hard for everyone, but the more sensitive you are, the harder it is. And so then the more you kind of have to disconnect or dissociate or shut everything off. And then, like, at least for me, like, the healing process has been about coming back into my body and feeling everything I didn't want to feel little by little, which can be a lot. And it can be overwhelming if you try to do too much at once. But as I've done that, then it's like on the other side of that is the gift of that sensitivity, which is very high amounts of love and joy and passion and creativity. And so it's really just, for me, it's been understanding, like, that's kind of where it comes from. And it's also the solution, but like to be very patient and easy with myself, because it is a process. And when you've gone through so much stuff, either in your own life or your ancestors or your parents or wherever it comes from, and you have that sensitivity, like, it's a step-by-step thing, you know, and it can feel easier to just escape, you know, and I totally get that. Yeah. So when
especially go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was saying, especially if you're not patient with yourself. And
yes.
Because
yes.
it is a process, like you said, and it takes time.
Yeah.
And as an addict, I want things yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that I feel like that impatience too, for me, is also like the sensitivity, because it's like there's like a multi-dimensional aspect to that for me. Like when you're like, if you think about like how like the spiritual realm might work, like where like instantly, as soon as you feel something, it's created. In 3D, there's this major delay. So like when you have that sensitivity, it's almost like you kind of expect it to be there like right now, but it's not, because it's not how like life works down here. So there's this like test to cultivate like that waiting time, and in the waiting time to just like love yourself as you are, without needing the thing, right? The manifestation or the person or the job or the money to come in. And that, I totally agree. It's been the biggest part of my healing process. It's just being easy with myself. It's like, that's really the solution to everything, is like loving myself for the sake of just loving myself, not for any other reason, not for a result, not for an outcome, little by little. So
moment by moment.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself to come back to that. I'm very forgetful. Like, just for right now.
But have you noticed shifts? Like, are you easier on yourself than you used to be? Like, have you had, or is it still like an everyday thing?
It's a big struggle for me. I'm not gonna lie. I'm also a Taurus, so everything is harder and heavier, and we're more stubborn, and it's just it's a burden. But I've done the breathing ceremony with Victor Odo.
The breathwork ceremony.
The breathwork ceremony. Yeah, I've done 3 of those, and that was something else for me. I mean, that, especially the last one that he did on FTP, it was a big deal. Like, I felt an actual clog in my heart chakra being released. I cried for decades. It was such
Yeah.
ancient tears that were like repressed for so long. I was so weak the next day, but lighter in a way, in a sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really want to do that more often.
No, it's amazing. I've had, that's one of been the biggest things in my healing is the somatic. It's like getting into the nervous system, because we're all humans, like not just addicts, like all humans are disconnected from their nervous system because we have like the extra part of the brain, the neocortex. So we don't come back into balance like the animals do, because we just kind of run off with the stories and then recreate them and re-trigger ourselves and re-traumatize ourselves. And like the breath work, the somatic work it really like moves the trauma out of the body and creates a space for it to come back into harmony, which is where like it's all like, I actually made the connection when I started doing the somatic that's why I did heroin, because the heroin shut everything down enough for me to just feel present. And I kind of always knew all I wanted was to just be present. I just wanted to be able to like be in the moment and be like, I'm okay. But I never felt that. The breath work, those things are so instrumental in making those shifts. Like, I'm happy that like you had that.
Yeah, it was, I believe I had a big fear to get into that, because I think now that we're talking about it, I'm starting to connect the dots, because I believe the whole eating disorder and weight made me feel really disconnected from my body. And I was addicted to that in many ways. I was addicted to a lot of things about that, but that separation, was addicted to separation. And the antidote for addiction is connection.
Right. Yes.
So in a sense, I was addicted to the addiction itself, to the separation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
disconnecting to from your body and like the natural flow of your body, like the kind of the eating disorder. So it's like, and then the control is like not like in the moment there's a surrender, right? But like we don't have control of everything that happens, like not hardly anything that happens. So then there's that need to try to like manipulate things, and but that creates more separation and lack of presence, which is
the ultimate loss of control, both addiction and eating disorders in reality. Because
it's always been like an effort to control my environment and to like not have to deal with the fear of like uncertainty, which is one of the biggest fears in the human psyche. And for me, like one of the reasons that is because of how much trauma. It's like, so like for me, anytime, and I know you can relate to this with your child, like anytime I don't know what's going to happen, and this is very common, common for everybody, but the Jews, like just for eons, like I've had this, like anytime you don't know what's going to happen, something bad's going to happen. Like there's always that thing where you have to run or you have to flee or you have to like prepare. So
uncertainty.
There's that, like I have to control this. And that's the trauma response. But as the more I heal that, and I'm still working on it, it's like one of the things I challenge myself with is, well, what if what comes out of the void is something good? Like, what if it's like, what if there's a good surprise coming? Like, why can't it be like that? And the more I heal, the more I can start to create that. But it all starts with the nervous, it all starts with the body, like getting those patterns out. And it's just a human, really deep human thing.
100%. Yeah, you said it, because we already ran on a familiar program that the end results usually weren't successful.
Right.
How about we lead into uncertainty, just surrender? Scary.
It's scary.
Who's addicted to control?
It's very scary. But what I've understood is like, I'm always trying to like block out the surprise, because the surprise is bad. But if I'm blocking out the bad surprises, I'm also blocking out the good surprises. Like if I'm blocking out surprises, it's all of it. So it's like that shift to like, it could be a good surprise. Like could be something I wasn't expecting that's better than I thought. And
it's also scary.
very scary. And just like feeling the fear, like a little at a time, like, and as I do that, it starts to transmute more. It's just like, yeah.
It's
I know.
fascinating because the day after I did the last breathwork ceremony,
Yeah.
I felt such openness that I never felt before. And I
Wow.
was, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was like waiting for the anxiety to come up. Where are you,
Right.
anxiety? Hello, I don't recognize myself at all. And yesterday it came back. So in a way, I'm like, whew, there you are. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it, but
You
it's familiar. I'm like, okay.
You know it. You know the
Here
anxiety.
here is my anxious self.
Yeah, no, it becomes like, it really isn't comfortable. They say like you have to go out of your comfort zone, and it's like it really isn't comfortable, but it kind of is because it's familiar. It's just like we know it. It's like I know what it's like. I've done that too with like healing sessions or like neurofeedback or whatever. And then my brain's like, wait a second, I'm like used to like, because I feel like it creates like a chemistry too. There's like an adrenaline rush, and there's all these chemicals that the body actually starts to depend like or thinks it likes, because it's kind of a high in a way to be like always on
Cortisol.
edge. Yeah, cortisol. Like trying to like train it to like get off of that.
Yeah, it was such a good feeling. It was a fantastic feeling. And I think it boils down to sense of worthiness and maybe not feeling that I'm worthy to contain such serenity within.
Yeah.
Being a clean vessel and being able to serve. And also I guess it's also self-obsession, an addiction to self-obsession.
Yeah. But it's a little bit of time. It's like you took, because what I find is we take a step forward and then we kind of back off a bit and kind of normalize, and then you take another one, but it sounds like you're moving up the scale, and that's all anyone can do. So what do you do? Like, what is your goal like with your life, with your practice? Like, what do you do with other people? What do you want to do with them? Like, what do you feel called to?
So when I joined FTP, my goal was to find courage to go on social media. And then I started doing videos quite consistently, and I found that I have quite a few messages to share. So that's what I focus now. I find content creating so therapeutic, and having it being imperfect and allowing myself to be imperfect and to make mistakes is extremely therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
And surrendering control in that department. What I would like to work on is finding discipline and focusing on an actual niche. Because I found when I started working, I still do body work. I love it. And I find it's just as therapeutic for me as it is to the people I treat.
Mm-hmm.
To your question, I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
I don't know, but I'll keep creating and find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But right now you feel called to the creating.
Exactly.
You just feel called to putting your voice out there. Yeah.
Yes. And it's something that I forgot that I liked. I'm a trained dancer, and getting into content creating, I feel like I'm connecting to the artist I disowned a long time ago.
Okay.
So it's kind of exciting for me, and being around other creative people.
Yeah, and just learning to create
inspiring.
Just to do it. I mean, that's kind of that's like almost the other side of, I mean, you could say the addict, but just kind of the ego of like, okay, I'm creating now, what am I getting? Like, what's the result? And just like being, like, I'm learning this too, just being in the process of doing it, just to do it. It's like just being in that flow of the creative energy is very, very healing. And then all the ego stuff comes up, and the judgment and the criticism and feeling like I don't fit in, or I'm not good enough, or someone's better, or all that stuff.
It's insane. It's all this shadow. It's not even shadow. It's this black pitch black pit of abyss that all of a sudden comes up of uncertainty and being not in charge and leaving the result to a power greater than yourself. It's insane and it's exciting. And I think I can get lost in that as well. So can I ask you, I know you're running the interview. It's your place to ask, but what do you do? How do you keep yourself productive, disciplined?
Well, so when I was getting sober, I got sober like 17 years ago, and I went into, and this is kind of related to your question. I went into a very, very structured rehab. It was kind of like, it wasn't it wasn't connected to the military, but it was very military-ish, kind of Tony Robbins-ish. It was like, you woke up at 7, you were out of bed by 7:10, you're downstairs by 7:30 for breakfast. We had a meeting where, we had morning chores. We had, anytime you did anything, you missed any kind of beat or moment, you got an essay, you had to turn the essay in. We had hours and hours and hours of group therapy. So I really learned in there, like, how to structure my life, and it just became like a habit. And then it kind of became a habit of breaking habits. Like when I first went in, I didn't want to get sober, but after about 6 months, I just kind of let go because I knew I wasn't getting out. And I just gave up like the heroin addiction. And I was like, okay, I'll have a little bit of a reservation. Maybe I'll use later. And then after another month, that just went away. And then I started getting really good at just kind of breaking bad habits. And like when I got, so I was still smoking, I was still eating McDonald's, I was, for the 2 years in rehab, I was on psych meds. And then when I got out, I felt this next calling, it just kind of came like like from the soul or whatever, to get off a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's like, I quit smoking and I got off psych meds and I got healthy. I started doing yoga, meditation. And so then I found this part of me that was good at breaking bad habits and also good at creating new habits. And I just kept doing that. And I'm also a Capricorn, so I have this sort of like structure routine thing. Like if I don't have some sort of routine, like I get kind of anxious. But I've also learned that it's important for my routine to be flexible too. And that's like a little bit of a control thing, but it's like repurposing like the need to control to something positive. I just repurpose like my addictive energy into like my healing process. And yeah, so I just like that's a big part of like my message. And it's not just my message, but like finding, it's like that correction thing, the autocorrect. It's like, even in the addiction, even though I was going like 1,000,000 miles an hour this way, I wouldn't say it was wrong, because what I was looking for was peace. It was love. It was harmony. It was a bit of connection to source. It just was not the best way to do it. So then it's like, you just take it and you start to guide it toward like a better target, instead of like writing it off and just being like, I'm a failure, I ruined my life. And I've been through all that, I made mistakes. I spent way too much time on drugs, like, fuck me, So I've just learned to channel it like back into a constructive way. So how do I stay disciplined? Well, I just commit to like I committed to doing 1 video a week at the beginning of FTP. And then Aaron talks about doing like a video every day. And I've developed my intuition enough to kind of ask that what's best for me. And so I just asked, I was like, 1 video a day feels like too much for me. That's going to be really too stressful. I'm not going to be able to stay consistent with that. So what can I do that's like going to push me, but not too much? And I got 3. I was like, I got to do 3 videos a week. And so I kind of fall into a routine where it's like, I film on this day, I edit and post on this day. And then it just after a period of time, it becomes a habit. And then it's like, I kind of have that, it's like that, I don't want to say the addict, but like that part of my head that's just like, we need to do this every day because we said we were going to do it, and it gets anxious if I don't do it.
See, that's structure. That's healthy, because
Yeah.
my experience with having the addict mind while I do it is I'll film and then I'll have to edit the same day and I have to post the same day, and it's not going to be perfect, but I have to get it done today, even if I stay up until 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I can't leave it alone.
Well, that's your process, and that if that maybe works for you, you know. And sometimes I do it all in the same day too, but it's just kind of like, I found that it's repurposing it, and then along the way, like looking at the anxiety that comes up and the trauma that comes up, and then clearing that and working, like giving that a space too, so that it's like, as I set the goal and I go in the direction of what I want, then I get triggered and trauma comes up, and then I stop and I kind of lovingly give space for that and to work through it and to let it go. And then I just keep going, you know? So it's like, because what we can do is we can like kind of force ourselves to go in this direction, and it's all force. And then that can be really like anxiety.
Forceful.
Yeah. And kind of traumatizing, and it may be a good thing, but you're like, if you're stepping all over your emotions and pushing over them too much, then your body gets overloaded there too. So for me, it's like a bit of both. And I always default to like self-love. I always default to being easier on myself, but it's like the little bit of a push and then the work on like the emotions, and then just, it's kind of back and forth, you know. It's a bit of,
Thank you for that.
yeah.
I needed to hear that. Thank you.
Well, and I'll even give you an example of like one of the ways I learned this, is I felt very called to do stand-up comedy and I still kind of do. And when I first went like 10, 11 years ago, I had so much social anxiety, and I always have, that just doing one open mic was like painful. And so but I was like, I got to do this. I got to do a few a week. That's the commitment. And sometimes I would drive like 2 hours in traffic to an open mic and sign up and wait for a half hour. And then, but I had all these health issues and physiological issues, and I was burnt out and exhausted. And sometimes I would just get up and do it. And other times I'd be like, I can't do this today. And I would stop like 10 minutes before, after driving for 2 hours, and I would go home. And then I'd start beating myself up, because I'd be like, well, like, you drove all this way and then you just gave up on it. And what I realized was, when I backed off and I was easy with myself and loving and just being like, it's okay, like it was a little too much, I healed that way too. Because like the lesson is love. And like we're taking the step to overcome the fear to go more into love. But then if we beat ourselves up when we don't do it, and we don't give ourselves permission not to do it sometimes, that's not love. So it's like, it doesn't matter which way you go if it's like the more internal lesson. And like, we want to like if I backed out every time, that would have been, you know, a different story. But that's just how I learned that. It's like a little bit of both, and always defaulting to like self. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Because I had a months of burnout after I started making video. I was so burned out. I was like, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
I worked around the clock, and I actually jumped on it. Felt like I was on a different timeline, and I was working and doing 3 sessions a day and 3 videos a day and posting all of. It almost felt like dissociating.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Stepping all over your emotion in order to get something done.
Yes.
And I heard from another friend of mine, she's also in the program. She said that overdoing and being overproductive is a trauma response.
Sure. Anything can be. It's the internal place that you're at with it. It's not so much the action.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, like I said, it doesn't mean you don't want to make yourself do it sometimes, but if like a lot of people go into overachiever mode as a way to avoid looking at the pain or the trauma or not feeling good enough. So it's like, you always want to kind of like, how do I come into balance with whatever I'm doing? You know?
Yeah, an overachiever all will burn out.
Yeah, totally. That's been like one of my life lessons, is like balancing the hyper sort of masculine, like accomplish, conquer, like push, like it, and my personality was, I just kind of know I designed it very different. It's much softer and easier, and that's, it's part of me too. But it was really to learn like the lesson of the feminine, like without the nurturing and the care and the support and the foundation, the masculine's freaking useless. It'll just wear itself out and, you know, die. Like it's and then if you sit around and do nothing all the time, like you're not, it's just a harmony. It's like a harmony. So yeah.
Fine line of balance. Yeah.
And it's ongoing, and it's like we're always kind of seeking to find balance. It's just like I find that we want to stay like close to the center, you know.
Because I don't believe the center exists in or attainable for humans. I mean, I hope it is. I want to get it, but I don't know if it is, you know.
I don't think there's a perfect center. So do you know who John Gray is?
No.
He wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. He
Never
has
read it.
he has a really good analogy. He calls, like, he's like, you're never going to be perfectly in the center, but it's like when you ride a bike, right? It's like you're kind of going a little to the right, a little to the left, a little to the right. But if you're balanced enough, like the bike still go, you don't fall off the bike, but you're never going to be like perfectly straight all the time. Like that's just not how life works. It's not how energy works. It's like flowing like around the center.
Right. Forward. Forward motion.
Forward, yeah.
Just like time.
And the forward motion keeps it going. Exactly. The forward motion keeps you like.
Is that inertia?
Balance. I guess so. Yeah, an object in motion will stay in motion. Yeah. Yeah. It's just continuing, you know, to go. So no, it sounds like you're like taking huge steps, like with what you've been through, and like you're doing it.
I feel like I'm in the right place with the right community, right communities. Yeah. Which was a trial and error, but I guess once you find your tribe, it was all worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. The FTP and then the
FTP and program. Yeah.
Do you have friends? Have you found like sort of like people that feel sort of soulmate like in the program, or at least friends, or?
100%.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And my sponsor actually is in Israel right now, and we met on Zoom, and I started doing step work in Hebrew, which is really, really, it's different. I mean, it feels, language for me, especially English, was another barricade to stay away from myself. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever used words to disconnect? Have you ever tried to decorate reality with words, like to fluff it up so you won't touch yourself?
I have a whole other experience with that. If I started talking about it, because we have like 5 minutes left, like that's a great topic, but it would take a lot to explain it. But yeah, I've had a big issue with language, like not in the way like because of learning a second language, but just being able to express myself verbally has been one of the biggest pains in my whole life. So I do. Because if the thing is, if you can't express yourself verbally, or I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but like for me, I couldn't. And there was like, it's the deepest disconnection there is, because we use language to connect to each other, right?
100%. And for me, I stutter. So speaking to a camera is so therapeutic. And the process of writing, you know, and doing shadow work and bibliotherapy and step work, it requires a certain level of honesty for you to have a breakthrough, for you to achieve healing. And that did not come easily for me. It took me a lot. Still, you know, I'm as honest as my denial allows me just for today. Because it's a part of being an addict, I believe. I was told. So it's a process of coming back to the truth.
Yeah, and that is what I've learned is the truth is the most important thing in the healing process. Because I was an honest kid, but then when I started doing drugs, I started lying because like you can't just be like, bye mom, I'm going to shoot heroin. You know, it's like you gotta start making up stories. And I was in that for 10 years, the lying. So
I
when
started lying long before I picked up.
oh, okay.
Because fantasy was my first drug.
Yeah, no, me too.
Oh, I would make up. Whew.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then, it's like breaking that habit is difficult, but it's like, that is the way you heal. Like every time you're honest, it's like, because the honesty, like truth is relative. Like there's no absolute truth. We all have our own relative truth. And in order to heal, you have to get to the layer that's truthfully present. And you can only get there by like being honest or just being authentic with what you are feeling or thinking in the moment. And then when you do that, that kind of brings the light of awareness into that layer and it can release, but only through being able to tell the truth. Yeah, that's
how we create connection as well.
yes, that's how we create a connection, well, authentic connection, aligned connection. Yes, through honesty and communication, but starts with, like you're saying, it starts with being able to be honest with yourself. Because you can't be honest with everybody in this world all the time because there's crazy ass people out there. You don't want to be honest with a psychopath. But yourself, yes. And certain people, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
As much as my denial allows.
Yeah, as much as your denial.
It's keeping it real.
Well, that's honest. Yeah, that's honest. As much as my denial. See, like that's you're just being honest about the dishonesty, and then it starts to make it honest.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is that? Are you progressing with that? Like just being able to, like having the support groups, is that helping you? Like
100%. For me, asking for help was a big deal. And picking up the phone when I have cravings, especially with my drug of no choice, where it's so accessible and legal.
Yeah, now.
I had a lot of shame around picking up the phone and say, hey, I'm in a crazy place because she said, he said, I think, they're thinking.
Yeah.
The insanity and share the insanity with someone and not being alone with it was something that took me a long time to break the shame around. Because I don't want to be insane. And I don't want people to know that I'm insane when I'm insane.
Yeah.
I rather fix it,
Yeah, I totally relate. One of the things I found though is the more I connect in these groups and listen to what other people are going through, not just addiction groups, but like just the FTP, like just light workers, everyone's going through, they all have the same stuff. They all have the same fears. And that doesn't take it all away, but it helps a lot to know, because we tend to think it's just us, like we're just alone in this crazy ass mind that we have. And there's something wrong with us. And then when you're like, oh, that's like what everyone thinks about themselves, then it's like,
I can be friends with these people. Yeah.
And that's when the healing starts, because it's like the safety and the connection. I think that's even, we have to wrap it up here soon, but even like animals in the wild, like when something traumatic happens, they gather together in numbers. And that gathering together in a communal sort of space helps them calm the nervous system down, because it's creating that feeling of connection and support and safety. And like even in Israel, I think like one of the reasons why you also said it was secure, even though it wasn't, was because everyone kind of came together like that, even in the midst of all the trauma. And that's what I'm so missing from society, and it's starting to happen with these different sort of communities, especially like Soulology and all these spiritual communities. But that is like the most important part of the healing process, is like feeling safe and being able to just talk about stuff,
to get back to source, to soul, to this blob of energy that is the same in all of us. It is fun to be together as.
Well, thank you so much. That was really great. I know there's like a lot more here to talk about too, but we're out of time. So do you have anywhere people can look you up, or do you want to put your handles out there, or just?
Oh, sure. I'm on YouTube as Alma, and the handle is Alma Neidel, ALMANEIDEL.
Yes.
And I am on Instagram. Where else am I? I'm on TikTok. Same name everywhere.
Yes, I just looked at, yeah. Awesome.
That was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. That was a real, I really enjoyed that. So, yeah, we'll be in touch, and I appreciate
100%.
and yeah, best wishes with everything.
Same to you.